thank you again for inviting me into your office and taking time away from your practice so that we can spend a little time today talking about long-term care, what it is, and how we can educate our clients. So as you can see from my first slide, statistical data shows us that once we reach the age of 65 years old, there's a 70% chance that we're going to need some sort of long-term care. Imagine if one of your favorite fund partners brought in one of their best analysts and they told you that at some point during your client's retirement that there was a probability, a 70% probability, that there would be a downturn in the market. You'd be all over it trying to help your clients protect their assets and income and quality of life. This is no different. So much like yourselves, you've probably seen family members, I've seen my own family members have a need for unskilled care in their older years. I recently, just within the last 2 weeks, had an uncle pass away who suffered from Parkinson's for 20 years, and 7 of that was spent with dementia. So as you can imagine, his wife became this caregiver, and what a physical and emotional toll that took on her. This is not something that they had planned for. So what the goal today is to educate you a little bit about long-term care, exactly what it is, and some of the ways we can help clients prepare for it. So what exactly is long-term care? Long-term care is considered unskilled care. Skilled care would be covered by some sort of insurance or Medicare, but long-term care is simply the need for assistance with 2 of 6 activities of daily living, or that you have some sort of cognitive impairment. And this can be a temporary or permanent situation. So what you're going to see a client that has a need for assistance with 2 of 6 activities, those are going to be eating, bathing, toileting, transferring, dressing, continence, or again an Alzheimer's or dementia type of situation. Now, where does long-term care take place? It's not necessarily in a nursing home. Long-term care or unskilled care can take place inside of one's home. It can take place in an adult daycare facility, an assisted living facility or continuing care community, or of course a nursing home, which is what most people associate it with, which that's not the place we want to see them end up. Now, let's talk a little bit about the cost of long-term care. On a national average, to have somebody come into your home and provide unskilled care costs roughly around $40,000 a year. For an assisted living facility, you're looking at roughly about $60,000 a year on a national average. And in today's dollars, a semi-private room in a nursing home costs right around $96,000. Now here's the kicker. In this market, it's about 25% higher. So look at all those costs and imagine them being even more expensive for your average client. Now, what your clients need to realize, especially those that are entering in retirement, they may think it's okay to self-insure if they have a couple million in assets, but what they need to realize is the costs are going to triple over the next 20 years. So by the time they find themselves well into retirement, possibly into their 80s, they're going to have a much larger bill to pay at that time. So let's talk a little bit about how people think long-term care is funded, and here are some of the data that people believe they think is going to cover it. Medigap, Medicare, Medicaid, true to an extent. Some people believe the government will pay. A lot of people end up paying on their savings, and we'll talk a little bit about Medicare and Medicaid and what it does and does not cover. So, for self-insuring, it's only affordable for the wealthy, but it's not really cost-effective. And again, today people think in terms of dollars and today's dollars without projecting the inflation. So we'll talk about Medicaid. Medicaid is for the impoverished. There's a 5-year look-back period if you try to give away your assets, meaning they can disqualify you from care. So you have to be considered indigent from both an income and an asset standpoint, okay? And another thing is you don't necessarily have control over where your care is provided. We know that insurance policies or Medigap policies are not going to cover this, so let's talk a little bit about Medicare. With Medicare, you're entitled to 100 days of care, only if you've spent 3 days admitted to a hospital receiving some sort of skilled care. Now, keep in mind that the first 20 days on Medicare are free. You're entitled to 100. The other 80 have co-pays and deductibles, okay? Now, the average length of claim on Medicare is only 22 days, so that ought to tell you something. Once you're done rehabilitating to a certain point, they want you off claim. So it's not going to be a long-term solution to providing long-term care. So let's talk about how do we help clients plan for this type of situation. Well, you've got three choices in the insurance market. There's traditional long-term care insurance. The good things about traditional long-term care is you can choose benefit period, you can choose dollars per day, you can put inflation protection on that product. So it's still a viable choice. But what clients tend not to like about it, it is a use it or lose it type of policy like auto or health insurance. And as of late, many carriers have issued rate increases on a lot of the policies that they have in force. So that's the downside to it. Well, there's also life insurance with a long-term care rider. Okay? That's nice because you can have a guaranteed policy with guaranteed premiums and death benefit. You can choose the amount of rider that you want to put on. You're going to have a pool of dollars there that are just going to be paid out when somebody triggers a long-term care need. So whatever they pay for comes off the table tax-free, whether they live and use it or die and pass it on to a beneficiary. The downside to life insurance with a long-term care rider is that you're not able to put any sort of inflation protection on that. And then we have one other type of product out there in the marketplace. It's called a linked benefit product. It's another life insurance build long-term care hybrid. So what's nice about a linked benefit policy is you can choose a benefit period. You can put inflation protection on there. You can pay it up very quickly in a short duration of time. So it looks a little more like a traditional long-term care contract. And it also has return of premium. Okay, so if a client wants to surrender those contracts and get their money back at some point, they can. That's not something that you see with the other two types of products. I think the downside to that is that if you don't ever use it, you get a lower death benefit. So now that we talked a little bit about how do we help clients plan for this, let's talk about how do we get clients to educate themselves, because that's the tough part of the discussion. Until they go on the mental journey or have the resources to educate themselves, they generally are not open to the discussion of some sort of long-term care planning. So I would recommend going to longtermcare.gov. It is the Department of Health and Human Services website. It is designed to educate advisors and clients alike so that you can understand what long-term care is, what the impact of the cost is going to be on your retirement, what it's going to look like down the road, and where do they find the resources if they do need some type of care. Okay? So it's important for us to educate our clients about this and help them be prepared. We want to help protect those assets in the event that there is a long-term care need. What you're doing is you're protecting the assets under management on your book. You're making them a little more sticky because there's going to be something there for the beneficiaries. And you're really giving them control and protecting their quality of life and giving their family peace of mind, knowing that if that time ever comes, if a need ever arises, that they've been educated and they have some resources to be able to prepare for this type of event. So I would challenge you to be the advisor who reaches out to your clients, educate yourselves, educate them, and be the one that's going to help them prepare for a time of crisis so that their loved ones can enjoy the time that they have with them instead of becoming unpaid caregivers. And with that, I will thank you again for your time.